Welcome to World at Work TV. I'm Allison Avalos, and I'm back today with Carrie Hsu for part 2 of our series on salary surveys, and we're talking about some of the selection considerations. Carrie, what are first some of the sources for salary surveys?
Also, there's probably 3 primary sources that we think about when selecting salary surveys. The first one is kind of what I'll call the published salary surveys. These are salary surveys that are off the shelf. Those can be quite inexpensive, all the way up to extremely expensive. They can be very simple, cover a very small market, all the way to national and international survey data. So it's sort of the survey for purchase category. The next one is also for purchase, but we call these custom or third-party surveys. And these are surveys where you, as well as a selected group of your peers within your industry, go out to a specific third party, often this will be a consulting firm, and ask them to house your data. So you work together with your industry peers, decide what positions that you want to put into your survey. That third party then collects the data from all the participants. You also get the advantage there of having very customized reports, looking at the data the way that you want to see it, that you've all agreed upon. And so, of course, that comes with probably an extra charge over what you'd pay for a regular survey, but of course the advantages is it specifically the industry that you want to see, the competitors that you want to see, and of course you can customize. The third area or source of data is what I'll just call free survey sources, and there's thousands out there on the internet. For example, you can get data that is, I probably would say, a little bit questionable, all the way up to fairly good survey data. The issue a lot of times with a lot of the free sources is you don't know what the source of the data is. Is that data that's just been supplied by individuals? What is the analysis process? What statistical procedures do they go through to clean their data? And so given that all of those are sort of behind the curtain and you don't know, that really raises questions about the validity and the data. So I think you need to be somewhat careful. Another source I would just mention is government data. At least within the United States, the Department of Labor, Bureau of Labor Statistics provides a myriad of data, which is excellent on a number of different categories and trends, and that data can be used as well. The one caveat with government data is it's usually a little bit dated. It's not exactly current, and sometimes it can be several months or even years into the past, and so you just have to keep that in mind.
I hear you sort of hinting at some of those considerations to think about, but talk through the criteria when you're choosing the survey source to identify the right one for your organization.
Well, I'd say the most important thing to consider, and I think this is really where you step back and take a strategic look at the purpose for salary survey data, is that we want to be able to assess what it takes to attract and retain the kinds of employees that we need within our organization to be successful. So with that in mind, one of the key considerations needs to be, where do you look for talent? Where do you recruit from? Do you recruit locally, for example? Maybe you're a very small organization. All of the positions within your company you're recruiting within a small area. Well, then a local survey is going to provide you all the information that you need. If you have higher level managers with specific skill sets, or analysts with engineers with specific skill sets, or higher level executives, then often you have to broaden your search, and you're going regionally, nationally, internationally, for example, to be able to really look. And if you think about, well, where would we look for an executive, for example? Well, you may do a national search. You're going to need to have national data. Other things to think about, if you are in a specific industry that's highly competitive, you'll want to look at maybe a third-party custom survey that we talked about previously, where you have specifically targeted competitors that you can look at data on a competitive basis. You have to look at things like how much can we afford. Surveys are expensive. You can get ones that are inexpensive, but there are many surveys that there are companies that go into the hundreds of thousands of dollars in survey budgets, and so you really have to assess how much we can afford. And so those are some pretty important considerations.
And quickly, is there a standard for how many surveys an organization should use when they're looking at a specific position?
You know, there is no standard. I can tell you that I have worked for one organization where I was in charge of compensation. It was a multi-billion-dollar company, and in the particular industry we were in, we were very comfortable using just one survey, and it was, again, one of those custom third-party surveys that we spoke about earlier, where we had exactly all of the competitors that we really cared about within this survey. The data was comprehensive. It covered positions from low to high. It covered all sorts of variable pay, pay practices, long-term incentive information. And so we were comfortable with just one survey. Now, generally speaking, when we talk about data and statistics, one of the things we learn in sort of 101 is that more data sources gives you a little bit more confidence. So if you have a manager of accounting and you only have one survey source, you hope that that survey source is a good sample of what's being paid, otherwise you're going to be led astray. If you have 3 samples, if you have 4 samples, 4 or 5 different survey sources all showing you a manager of accounting, then you can look across those surveys, and to the extent that those are similar, you can have a higher degree of confidence. Now keep in mind that with many surveys, as we mentioned, comes additional cost, and it also comes with an additional analysis work. So now you're having to manage 5 different surveys. Somebody has to input the data into those surveys and analyze the data. So while we would say generally more sources are better, for every company there's going to be a diminishing return, where you will determine that the additional survey, both by virtue of the cost and by the extra analysis that it entails, is not worth the extra expense. But certainly for most companies, I would say 3 to 5 major surveys, and maybe you have to purchase a few additional surveys for some boutique or hard to find positions is sufficient.
Thanks, Carrie. Join us next time for our final part in this series on salary surveys, where we'll talk about the utilization. For World at Work TV, I'm Allison Avalos.